So that's where we were at the end of this. And we had a bunch more questions that we wanted to ask. What do we still need to know when we have, so suppose we would want to go from this program to say, well, let's do a policy for all of India. What else do we need to know before we move further? Yeah.
I think it would be interesting to understand how, what is the relation between attendance and how much those programs are actually effective. Because, it showed that enrollment as a whole doesn't have too much of an influence, but maybe attendance would have.
Right, so we could say, well, maybe there are other things to look at, children attendance, teacher attendance. Maybe the big difference with the Balsaki is that they were there. Maybe that's just it. So can we change the learning just with incentives?
Also, maybe look at the curriculum. Maybe the reason why the children are learning is because the material is more basic. Whereas if you just stay in the classroom, the material is already too hard and you're not able to.
That's the other big contender. So you have both. You have the contender. One is, okay, the Balsaki actually there. The kids are going. That's why they are learning. The second is, that's not the incentive. This is really the pedagogy, which is, it's about the learning material. And if we could train the teachers to train at that level, we would have the same effects. Yep.
The cost effectiveness of the program.
Right, so we could say, what's the cost effectiveness? In the city, we could look at the cost effectiveness elsewhere.
Also, it could be interesting to see what will be the effects of having more strict, passing policy. Because a lot of kids are advancing to the next grade without actually being prepared, and maybe making that a little bit more strict so that they don't go to the next level until they're actually prepared. That could be true.
Yeah, it's a very good point. In fact, the policy is not strict at all at the moment. Rukmini says it in a short video. Everybody passes, regardless. So maybe having something where actually repeating is allowed or remedial education of some kind is provided would help. Other question one might ask is it only an urban phenomenon or would also we work in rural schools? Do you need to pay the people or could you have volunteer? Would it be sufficient to distribute materials if it's a material question? Would you be able to motivate the teachers to do it, to do this kind of, to focus on the students? Can you concentrate even more on the basic and make even more progress on the basic by not trying to do remedial of everything, but just focusing on learning? So those were the questions that Pratham had. Those were the questions we had. So I think we get another question you could ask is, on the basic, you could ask the opposite question, which is, can we hear you were saying that the students at the top, it's not that they are exactly ready to come to MIT. It's like they are still way below grade level. Is there something that can be done for them? Or this very simple pedagogy that Pratham has works only for the very low achieving kids? So we had all these questions, but it was many years ago. We had a lot of time. So we started looking at them. So the first thing we did was a new evaluation in Jaunpur in Uttar Pradesh. By now, Pratham was not just, in the first program, Pratham was running this program and they called us to evaluate it and we went and evaluated what it is they were doing. By the Jaunpur program, we were working together. So this study is actually authored by Rukmini Banerjee along with the rest of us. We were now all working together to try to figure out, can we learn more what's going on? So Pratham renamed the Balsaki program as the Read India program. And as they renamed it, did a shift to focus it on something even more basic and simple on reading, and try to spread out much more in everywhere, not focus on cities, but also work in rural areas and work on a much larger scale. So we worked in rural Uttar Pradesh. We had 3 groups of villages here in Jaunpur. One group where we just went to see all the parents, had village meeting, we meaning Pratham, went to see the parents and say, you know what, there are things you can do, you can advocate, we can lobby for more resources for your schools. You can get an extra teacher that the government will have to pay for, you can get scholarships, etc. That's the first treatment. To see whether parents could would be able to engage with the system. Second thing we had is we realized that parents were overestimating how much their kids know. So a first step that Pratham has discovered to get people excited about reading is to train parents into administer the small Pratham test. So you go and say, Ben, can you read this? And Ben is like staring blankly, and then they realize, oh my God, like the kids can't read. And they've been giving their kids to the schools faithfully for years and assuming that there would be something would come out of it. And then they realize in this exercise that actually not really. So the parents prepared the report cards for the village, and then there was a lot of discussion. And the third was the Read India volunteer. At the end of this process, Pratham asked anybody, are they volunteers to learn Read India? In this case, they were not paid. People just came up, boys and girls, like usually youngish boys and girls, came up, got trained by Pratham, and started running these camps for students, Read India camps. And what did we find? That's kind of the result in one graph. These are kids who, at baseline, could not read anything. And this is the result at endline. These three lines look the same: control, information only, information plus stat, provided no significant difference, but a somewhat bigger jump for the Read India program. That jump, you might think, is really not that big. So first, I have to tell you it's statistically significant. This is different than that. But second is, this jump is only due to 13% of kids who actually showed up. So only 13% of kids who couldn't read went to the reading camp. So we can do the same exercise, the same Josh Angris exercise that we did for Bombay or that we did for looking at the effect of the Balsaki to look at the effect of Read India. So we divide this little bar by 13%. What is it going to do to my little bar? It's going to make it look much bigger. So this is what we have here. And that's what we find. So these are kids who couldn't read letters at baseline. And now I'm adding to the control group the little bar that are now become bigger. And we get to exactly 100%. So this suggests that 100% of the kids who actually attended the camp are able to read letters at endline. So this is a program which is trying to get the kid to read. And it doesn't get them to read full paragraphs, but it puts them one level up. And you can do the same exercise with kids who were at letter levels are able to read paragraph, and kids who were at paragraph level are able to read stories. So this is a program that, as a program, is tremendously effective. But there were still some issues, which is the very few kids attended the camp. Why did only 13% of kids attended the camp? And that is something that was a puzzle for us. Next time, we'll spend much more time on why did only 13% of kids come to the camp. Therefore, the overall effect was low. Next time, we'll try to understand that. But today, I'll tell you what happened when we saw this result, which is we saw an effective pedagogy where if I manage to grab Ben by the collar and try to inculcate him how to read with the Pratham technique, I can do it. He can learn letters. So we could say, well, but on the other hand, if it's left to volunteer and left to the effort of the parents, we only manage to get 13% of the kids. So the next step was, is it possible to integrate this within the school system? Because the attendance of the enrollment is already high, students are already captive audience in the school. If we could use the teachers to do this, then that would work better. So off we went. Pratham got a bunch of money by Gates and Hewlett Foundation to expand the program in about 100 districts. That's how they reached 38 million kids today. But they felt that they should try and work through the states. And so here the trade-off was, well, if it does work, if we can make it work with regular teachers, then we will have many more kids reached. So that's the advantage. The 13% will become 80%. On the other hand, the treatment effect might go from this very large treatment effect we have to a much lower treatment effect if the teachers are not willing to or able to carry out the program. So that's the question. So next experiment, we worked in 2 states, Bihar and Uttarakhand. Uttarakhand is, in the meantime, UP got cut in 2. And Uttarakhand is it's one of the big mountainous states of a former part of UP. Very beautiful place with mountains and stuff. So in Bihar, we contrasted 4 models in different states. A summer camp taught by government teachers, train teachers to implement Pratham as part of their regular teaching, train volunteers roughly like the Jampur model, and distribute only the material. Can you just distribute the material, the textbooks, and get an effect from there? That would be the best, because that's very cheap. In Uttarakhand, we tried this same teacher training as in Bihar, and the volunteers were put in the school with the idea that maybe in this way the kids would come. And what did we find? What we found is that, again, when you have the volunteer intervention, that again works extremely well, with effects similar to what we had in Jaunpur. So what we found in Jaunpur, we find the same thing in Bihar. It worked in the same way, with not very many kids going, but the kids who went really benefited. And what is interesting here is that it's not only basic reading level anymore, it also covers more advanced skills, and the gains were felt at all levels. So the same approach of try to teach what the kids don't know. It works at reading, but it also works at more advanced level. So great, we had big effects on learning, we were happy. However, in the teacher intervention had very, very little effect. So training the teachers have very, very little effect. There is one effect on Hindi written test. So if you squint, you find a little bit of an effect of the teachers, but basically not much. And moreover, when you put the volunteers in the schools, the volunteer had no effect. In fact, what we found is when you put the volunteer in school, the teacher absent more. So they just stay home more, and the volunteers start teaching the kid, and then it has no impact. So what do we conclude? Is that the teachers are just horrible and they can absolutely never teach anything to the kids? Well, we don't think that's the case because of the summer camp. In the summer camp program, it's the teachers who were trained to teach. The teacher had to volunteer and they were paid extra to teach summer camps, but it was still teachers, and they were trained, and they did it. And the summer camp effect was as large as the volunteer treatment. It means that teachers are able to teach kids to read if they want to. So the problem is that it's not that they can't, it's that usually they choose not to. And why do they choose not to? That's what we are going to see next time. Where are we? We know that we can improve the quality of education because you can take a high school graduate, train them for 2 weeks, and they can do it. And the puzzle is that, why is it not taken more? Why is it not taken more by the school system? When the teachers are trained, it doesn't work. Why is it not taken more by teachers themselves? Why is it not taken more by parents who are sending their kids who are not sending the kids to the reading camp when they have a chance? I mean, some do, but not that many. And finally, there are private schools. A lot of these kids are going to private schools. The private schools are somewhat more effective than the public schools, but not tremendously more. So why aren't the private schools using those techniques? After all, nothing stops them. They can fire the teacher if they don't do what they do. They are more flexible. So why aren't the private school adopting that? So that's kind of where we are, which is there is an effective methodology, very effective, Can get everybody to read at least one more level from where they were in 3 months of a volunteer. You can increase test scores by 1 standard deviation. And yet, this is not taken up. So this is not a technology. The technology exists, but it's not adopted, neither at the individual level nor at the system level. So we'll see where we are next time.